And he had told Connie Smith previous that he wasn't sure what he was going to say. I don't think he said
anything.
But there was a lovely bow and a very nice courtesy from the young lady.
That's right, but that's wonderful because his beautiful kit, I guess, his coatee, his ceremonial coat is a 1/4 size. It's the smallest, custom made. The manufacturer has never made one so small, and he just looks beautiful, just wonderful today.
It is full-up formal dress, make no mistake.
That's Rob Farmer, our cameraman, who is trying desperately to step out of the Queen's way.
She's moving now from the oldest members of the regiment, the veterans, to the youngest, who are the cadets.
Yeah. See the fresh faces there now.
And she spoke, Robert, in her speech to the new generation of reservists, did she? What did you hear particularly in her address that caught your ear?
Well, it was a very deftly crafted speech. We had no idea what she was going to say, and we had no input in what she should say. What I can tell you is that very interesting things. It just showed how alert she is to what we've done in the past. The mention of Hill 195 as a World War II battle. I mean, it's almost unbelievable that she was able to mention that, and rightly so. I thought one of the most interesting things of all was when she used a little bit of Gaelic at the end, and she said, Canada Gubara. That's Gaelic, it means Canada forever. Our regimental motto is Albain Gubara, Scotland forever, which was chosen in 1903 by the Scottish community in Hamilton that led to the formation of the Argyles. So I thought it was rather interesting that Her Majesty put in that old little traditional touch and changed it slightly and Canadianized it.
One of the songs that was composed especially for this particular event, we're hearing in the background, and there's some Gabra in its title too. I wouldn't even attempt to pronounce it. Or no, that's one of the regimental songs. But there is one that has been prepared as well.
Yes.
But this is the
interesting to see the Queen absolutely unrushed. She'll be well aware she's running half an hour late on the program, the printed program.
We weren't going to notice. We weren't going to mention that, but
no, but she's always aware of these things, and yet she took time to speak to many of the young members of the regiment and the cadet corps.
The RCMP escort, who will let her into her car as well, other police officers. One final word of goodbye to Mayor Bob Wade. That'll be a thrill for him, I'm sure. John, I'm interested. Some people who accuse this Queen of being somewhat aloof, she's not one who shows her emotions, say that she holds on to the bouquets of flowers so she doesn't have to shake people's hands.
Well, the Queen, I think both for security concerns that have been expressed to her, and also because she has a very delicate build, and shaking hands endlessly is tiring for anyone, and run the risk of someone grabbing you or
carpal
squeezing you,
carpal
tunnel, whatever. So she does hold on to one bouquet, and then all the bouquets that are collected by her and her ladies-in-waiting go to local hospitals and nursing homes. So this gift, this idea of community, is extended.
Wonderful. As she returns to her car, again, Heritage Minister Sheila Copps, Mayor Bob Wade, see who else, Lieutenant Colonel Earp as well. As well. Ida Wade.
And it'll seem to all her hosts today, won't it, that this time passed by in a flash.
And a wonderful close-up look.
That's the brooch too. The Argyle brooch is there.
Yes, as you said.
Yeah, you mentioned it would be. Yeah.
The smile has softened. As she's 76, we've mentioned, the grandmotherly look is just one that is so warm, I think. It's changed, perhaps.
Do you think a lot of the emotion that was tied to the Queen Mum has been transferred to?
Very much, don't you think? The passing of generations, and the Queen is now more and more seen as the matriarch of the royal family, of our nation, of the Commonwealth. And as she ages imperceptibly, like the Queen Mother, she will become more and more an icon, living history. And that's a very potent thing in today's world, where no politician who's in one day and out the next can hope to emulate. And that's part of the value of the monarchy in our system of government.
And where does the monarchy go after Queen Elizabeth? What's
well,
next?
let's hope that discussion is really suitable for about 25 years from now, if she lives as long as her mother. But you'll have a short reign of Charles III, as he'll be, much like Edward VII reigned briefly after Victoria's reign, and then all the excitement, both then and in the future, of the young King William, but before that, the young Prince of Wales. Who will he marry? What will he do? Will he go into the Navy? You know, all those questions. So the royal family reinvents itself. All hypothetical, but very real, because they're members of our extended family. We feel a kinship with them, and just as our families have known heartache and sorrow, and triumph and great celebration, so does the royal family.
Can you speak again. You've been quoted publicly on the remarks that John Manley, our deputy minister, made about the ill-timed remarks. I think the rude remarks that many would think that perhaps we should cut our ties to the monarchy just on the day she arrived for her visit to our country. And I know you thought that was unconscionable that he should say that.
Well, what struck me was that not just what you might expect the monarchist to feel that way, but members of his own cabinet said, you know, John, your views are well known. There's no need to express them this day, just as we wouldn't dream of criticizing our own mother or grandmother when she comes home, and we may have some issue with her, but this is a time of celebration. This is 50 years. This is an institution that John Manley can criticize 353 days a year, but you'd think when the Queen is in Canada for 12 days, he could hold back.
Do you think that when she arrives in Ottawa on Sunday, John Manley will be escorting her?
Well, the Prime Minister said he will. I think the sad thing about that is not that John Manley should be punished, but much more that the media focus, which is your job, I recognize, will be on every nuance of expression. There'll be endless psychobabble. Probably I'll be participating in it as to who looked what way, what they said in the car, and
how she
it will deflect
to him.
from the central theme. And here the Queen will be in our nation's capital, Thanksgiving Sunday, the whole idea of celebration, we thanking the Queen and she celebrating all we've accomplished. That'll be diluted inevitably by the scrum, the media spin.
That's right.
And as I asked you earlier, and you responded in kind, what do you think is going through the Queen's mind now? When you think about it after a while, it's like, that isn't a fair question, is it? At any rate, you'll be asked it again.
You will. I want to find out what's on the minds of some people who saw the Queen close up. Connie Smith has been in Copps Coliseum all afternoon. Of the 17,000 people there, she has some special guests, and we'd like to meet them now. Connie?
I certainly do, Heather. First of all, we have Lori Seeger, who's the wife of one of the Argyle members, and you had a tear in your eye, Lori.
I had more than a tear. It's something I've waited my whole life for, and it was thrilling.
And I saw her approach you, and she looked at you, and she spoke to you. What did she say?
They introduced me as one of the first women in the Argyles in peace years, and she asked me if that was true, and I said yes, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what she said after that.
Well, it was a day you won't forget.
Absolutely.
And we're going to move over here to another wife of one of the Argyles, and tell me what she said to you, and your name first.
My name is Beverly Hall, and the manager, she looked at me and she goes, and who are you? And I said, oh, we represent the wives. And she goes, is your man out there? I said, yes, he is. And that was pretty much it.
And a very proud day for you. And of course, the young stars of our show today, we have Max Ballinson and Katie Compton. What was it like meeting the Queen, Max?
Very good.
Was she pretty?
Yes.
Did she say something to you?
Yeah.
What?
She said, it's your dad in the regiment.
That's what she said? Okay, and Katie, what about you? What was it like to meet her?
It was kind of scary. I was really nervous.
What did she say to you?
The same thing that she said to Max.
So this will be something you can tell your class tomorrow?
Yes.
They will. And finally, our Albert Coffin, whom we spoke to just before, is getting away on me here. Albert, you finally got to meet the Queen after all. Tell me about it. What did she say to you?
She said, of all things, that we had met before and that I brought the regiment back. Somebody must have primed her because I can't conceive that she could remember all those.
Well, you never know. I've got to let you go to you're taking a salute now. That is our former Lieutenant Colonel of the Argyle, the only surviving commanding officer from World War II. He got his wish to meet the Queen today. Back to you, Dan and Heather.
That is just wonderful.
Yeah. We sometimes, because of the passage of time, forget the important role they played.
Let's just comment on the decorations for Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Earp. That's he there, isn't it? I think it is, yes. Alvin Earp.
He's got a wide range of decorations there. The first one is the Order of Canada, which he received for his work in education over the course of his life. But what's very interesting about him is that he was severely wounded, as I said, on the 14th of April, 1945. He was actually shot in the head and had 2 operations, brain operations. And I've often said to him, just think where you might have gone in life had you not been shot in the head.
Well, it's quite something as a Canadian to look at our decorated heroes.
It
really is. It's quite an emotional thing. I was commenting, Katie Compton, and Max Balance, and so cute. And Katie goes to St. Aloysius School in Stratford, and she had a video taken, so she's going to show all of her grade 1 class that tomorrow. And Max goes to Rousseau School at Ancaster, and I'm sure they're watching coverage as well and thinking they're stars of their class. It's going to be quite a thing. Quite a show and tell.
Yeah, I was going to say the greatest show and tell in the history of the school.
That's exactly right. But is it quite typical, you who've seen these royal visits before and talked to people and met the royals himself, they're speechless, overcome with emotion, but speechless at just the grandeur of the moment. Is that a typical reaction?
Almost always. There are people who were decorated during the war and were taken actually to Buckingham Palace to be decorated by the Queen's father, George VI. And these would be battle-hardened soldiers, and in a couple of cases, so really grisly people who you thought would be capable of just about anything. And they were incapable of anything. They couldn't speak, they were just overcome. And that's pretty typical in these situations, unless one's been exposed to it more than once. When the time comes to meet someone of that degree of celebrity.
It's pretty impressive pageantry as well when you look at the scope of what happens in Britain, for example, during any kind of military honor or special event. They bring out 400-year-old carriages staffed by, unbelievable.
And you have to remember too, Dan, that while our shot provided by your able staff is very tight and it shows the person speaking to the Queen, they are surrounded, that individual, by the press pool, by officials of the royal entourage. It is a very daunting moment, even for, as you said, Robert, hardened people.
Major Coffin here.
Yes.
Is that the correct title, Major Coffin? Lieutenant Colonel, or is he Major?
Lieutenant Colonel
Lieutenant
Coffin.
Colonel. Christy Blatchford from the National Post wanting to speak to him, but as he talks to his fellow Argylls, what is the bond that exists among the veterans of the Argylls? Do they see each other frequently?
Oh, yes, they do. There's a very vibrant Veterans Association, which was started up in 1946. And they've had reunions every other year, and semi-annual reunions and regular meetings where they share stories and drink a bit, all good things. But the bond, one of the most incredible things we're used to now, I think, the Band of Brothers, which has now made its television appearance, gives us some sense. But this is really an institution whose history is written in blood, and that's not an exaggeration. And the people who've been through that experience, especially in battle, have a camaraderie which is unlike that experienced by any other human beings at any other time in their lives. And they'll always look back on that. I mean, they'll never experience it again, but look back on that as being something which they had, which other people just don't share.
One thing that I would like to see change is the way that we present our history to our students, because there isn't the kind of education, I think, that represents our country's contribution in the world wars. It is in no way reflected adequately in our education system, and it should be. It's every September or November 11th we hear, lest we forget. But unless we educate, we will forget.
Exactly.
And that needs to be done.
And perhaps the fact that there were some thousands of elementary school students there in the audience at Copps Coliseum today to see the living history of the regiment, that may have some sense to them today.
No, you're absolutely right. This is a good thing. And this is one of the reasons why that we hope the Queen would come, is that in her honoring her own regiment, it also brings attention to what has been done over 100 years for this country, by this regiment, for this community. And that's a good thing. I mean, as Dan said, unless we educate, we will forget.
Yeah. We have about 4 minutes before we have to go, unfortunately. It's been such an enjoyable 90 minutes together. But I'm wondering, John, apart from the John Manley, all eyes focused on how will they react together, what are you going to be looking forward to? She's off to New Brunswick next, and
She'll
then
be
to
visiting
Ottawa.
3 new communities in New Brunswick after tonight's gala at Roy Thompson in Toronto, and then she comes to the nation's capital, and she'll actually briefly be in Quebec, where she'll be received by the Lieutenant Governor and have a federal
Different
dinner.
reaction to her there in Quebec.
Well, a very positive reaction to her as a human being. I think we'll leave it at that for now, perhaps. But the overwhelming emphasis of the Ottawa portion will be her walkabout on Parliament Hill after the multi-faith service of Thanksgiving, and then a very solemn moment, her first visit to the tomb of the unknown soldier, which of course has been dedicated since her last homecoming to Canada. So again, this fusion of past and present. I'm sure we're going to see a crowd of young people and Canadians of all stripes on the Hill, and then reflecting on our military past at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and that challenge to service. The Queen thus linking the generations, linking herself once more intimately to Canada, and looking forward to coming back in 2005 for the centenaries of Alberta and Saskatchewan in Confederation. So past, present, and future fused.
And as also part of her Ottawa agenda, as a lifelong horse enthusiast,
right,
she's going to be giving the RCMP one of her royal horses, and that's, I understand, going to be one of the highlights as well of the Ottawa leg.
Absolutely, a reciprocal gift for
That's
Burmese
right.
and Centennial, which were given to
That's
her
right.
and which she loved and rode frequently.
That's right.
Rode in all the parades, actually,
Absolutely.
in Britain, because they were the most trustworthy of her mounts, and that's quite an honor for the RCMP, to say the least. So they're getting one of the royal horses. I didn't realize that. That's marvelous.
From the Sandringham stud, I think.
That is. So overall, Robert, as our real connection to the Argylls here, how would you say the day in Hamilton went?
A success probably beyond what we'd anticipated,
Okay.
I think. Certainly the John has commented on this, but the reception of the crowd down there is, I mean, there was an enormous amount of energy in that building, and with the focus on the regiment and what it had done, and particularly, I mean, I don't want to harp on this, but to go back to at the core of this is service, and at the core of the service were those lives lost. I mean, so I think those brief moments where that comes to the fore within all these wonderful traditions, these slightly new twists that we've had, even in the Queen's speech, a significant day for the regiment and a wonderful kickoff for the 100th anniversary year.
And what happens to your new colors now?
Well, the new colors, simply they go back, they're housed in the officers' mess, and from here on in, that's what we carry on parade.
And the old ones, what happens to them?
But roughly 1 year from now, there will be the military ceremony is called laying up, and they'll be laid up in Central Presbyterian Church, where they'll join the second set of colors.
All right.
Truly
Wonderful.
amazing. It has been a day to remember, to say the very least. We thank both of you for being with us and explaining us very well what it is that we are seeing and the importance and significance of it. And I know you're heading down to Toronto tonight, John. You're going to be attending yet another royal function.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank you both for your analysis.
My pleasure.
And we're going to wrap up the day and take a look at things and condense them a little bit, and we'll have a lot more for you at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, let me say thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of the Queen's visit to our city, and we'll take a look back at the Queen's Day, starting at Sheridan College and in Hamilton, and reflect, and we'll see you next at 6. Good night.
Goodbye.
South Africa and Lebanon.